Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Patriot TV. I am your host, JD Rucker. And when I say another episode, this is really, we're going to call this episode one again. I know we've had several episodes already. I know that we've been doing Patriot TV for a long time, but I've been listening to feedback from people. You can always send me feedback directly by going to jdrucker.com/talk, jdrucker.com/talk. That comes to me directly. And I listen. I don't always reply to everyone, but I do read every single one of them that comes in. And one of the concerns, complaints, I guess you could say, is that so I have the JD Rucker show, which is my primary show. I do it for an hour and a half to 2 hours, in that range every day, Monday through Friday at noon Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern. And it's awesome. I love doing it. And during that show, I take whatever the overarching subject of the day is, and I talk about various stories. Sometimes I talk about one story for 2 hours. Sometimes I talk about 8 stories and spread them out, but usually they're about a theme. And one of the complaints, feedback, we'll call it, that I've been getting for a while, especially after launching Patriot TV again, is that sometimes people don't have an hour, 2 hours to sit there and listen to me talking about a particular topic. It's nothing against me. They always say it's just, that there's not enough of a diversity play, right? I'm not going to change my show, my normal show, because that's how I've always done it, and it's not that I don't take feedback. We do make changes from time to time, but that's what I do. And the majority of the feedback is still positive. With that said, when I launch Patriot TV, which comes on at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, I've been basically doing almost the same thing. I tried a variation of it to where I was doing basically 3 segments, so 3 separate stories, but it wasn't much different from the JD Rucker show. And I acknowledge that. And so some of the suggestions have been to do shorter clips, maybe even news recaps. So we did some testing over the weekend, and lo and behold, an episode where I did just that turned out to be very well received. And so that's what we're going to be doing going forward with Patriot TV, at least the news show. We're actually thinking about doing 2 shows, one morning, one in the afternoon. We'll see how it goes. We'll see. Lord willing, I go where I'm directed. I try to keep my finger on the pulse of the Lord's will, and if he's pushing me towards doing even more shows, so be it. Praise God for that. And if he wants me to do 2 or even 1 or 0, I'm beholden to him and him alone. And so, as of now, it feels as if this is the direction that we're supposed to be heading. So that's how we're going to be doing it today, and at least the rest of the week, maybe for the rest of my life. We're going to be doing Patriot TV with short news clips. Okay? So take a piece of content, focus on it for, a very short period of time, and then move on to the next one, sort of like a news channel, a news show. I've never liked those. Okay? That's not my cup of tea to watch because I don't like I like deeper dives into things, especially if I'm the one talking about them. But I already do that. So why just repeat it? Why not make my life easier and maybe a show that's more enjoyable to you all by doing it like this? So, going forward, at least for this week, we'll see how it goes. If the numbers don't pan out, then they don't pan out. If the comments are like, dude, don't do that anymore. You need to be more verbose or more analytical or more commentary oriented or whatever, then so be it. But I think you guys are going to like it because, again, the idea here is instead of me just talking, I'm going to be highlighting other news, real news, actual full-blown news, sometimes commentaries as well, giving a little bit, maybe even just a short 10 cents worth of commentary, and then move on. Boom, boom, boom. Just keep it rapid fire. Lots of stories. So that's what we're going to be doing on today's episode of Patriot TV. And the very first one, my first story, under the new Patriot TV style, is a good news story. Let's start off with good news, and it's even coming from California, of all places. Who would have thunk it?
Your personal data is being collected everywhere you go, your phone, your car, even your grocery store, using it to build a profile of you without you even knowing it.
Yes, but a California law, a new one, will force many of those companies that collect that data to delete your personal information.
ABC 7 Eyewitness News reporter Luz Pena explains Californians are, Luz, signing up to opt out.
Yes, Emma and Dan, hundreds of thousands of people have registered with the state of California to have their digital identity removed from servers. And in just weeks, California will become the first state to close a major gap in privacy protections. The personal data of over 300,000 Californians will be deleted soon, as a new state law is implemented in just weeks.
I wrote it to help us reclaim control of our personal information. It lets us delete our information from these shadowy data brokers that collect our most personal information. I'm talking about information about where we live, our family members, our relationship status.
California Senator Josh Becker authored the state's Delete Act. He said nearly 600 data brokers were forced to disclose their data registry and the type of information they have collected. How do you make sure these data brokers are actually deleting people's data?
And that's the job of the California Privacy Agency and also the Attorney General. We gave power in this bill to the Attorney General to go after people who don't comply with the law.
The Electronic Frontier Foundation has been concerned about data brokers' business practice for decades.
Make their money by collecting information from lots of different sources, sort of analyzing it, repackaging it, selling it to other people. And, you know, I understand that that is the way they make their business, but I think I and a lot of people can be kind of uncomfortable with the idea that somebody I don't know is collecting information.
After the first round of deletions, data brokers will be required to delete any new data collected every 45 days after that.
There are other states that have some different approaches for deleting your data, but nothing's got that knockout power like California. Because now data brokers are required to follow what's the Delete Act, even if they don't register in California.
UC Law San Francisco professor Robin Feldman believes California's fines will be key to enforce this.
They're not like a sort of you pay a fine and then you're done. It's like a parking meter that keeps running, and they can multiply exponentially.
And California does not have a cap on these fines, so they will continue to accumulate if these data brokers don't delete your information every 45 days. You can still sign up to have your data deleted. If you go to privacy.ca.gov, this will be an ongoing process, so you can do this even after August 1st. In the newsroom, Luz Pena, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Just so people are aware, this is not for companies like Facebook or Instagram. Those are not data brokerage companies. Those are social media companies. These are companies that gather a whole bunch of information on you. It could be scraped from your social media. It could be from really anywhere. And then they build profiles and then they sell that information. And it is a huge industry. It's billions and billions of dollars. So it looks like California has about 600 plus registered brokers that they are aware of and had to disclose what data they had on everybody. And they were collecting things like addresses, family info, relationships, location history. So they had a lot of information, and all of this is going to be required to be deleted if you register through a link that they provided here. It's the privacy.california link. So what's actually making these companies delete your stuff? So there are some very, very heavy fines if companies do not comply. It's $200 per consumer, per deletion request, per day. So how does that break down? Well, if you have one consumer request ignored for 30 days, that's $6,000. If you have 1,000 consumers ignored for 30 days, that's $6 million bucks. So that means that this is pretty much mandatory or go broke. But the one thing is that they have to delete it every 45 days. So they could technically delete it, gather a bunch of information on you, sell it, and then have to delete it again in another 45 days. So that's like one loophole, but it makes it tougher.
See, I'm starting to like this already. All I got to do is find amazing clips. In that case, Wall Street Apes, amazing account to follow on X. did all the commentary for me, so I don't even have to say anything about that. I can move on to the next story, and we're going to stick with the theme of good news. Good news from leftist areas, leftist states. The quote-unquote millionaire tax that they have imposed in Washington is already getting lots and lots of heat. Yeah, even Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson is getting just blasted because she's like, yeah, I don't care, let them leave. What did she say? Bye. That was her message to these businesses that are leaving because of the millionaire tax. Well, that may be changing. It's possible. It hasn't happened yet, but it's possible that the millionaire tax could go bye-bye, thanks, in this case, to voters.
The ballot in Washington state, where voters will soon decide whether to overturn a new millionaire's tax, as more than half of the state's business leaders say they are looking for the exit. Sarah Allegre reports. She's live in Seattle for us. Hi, Sarah.
Hi there, John. I mean, for years, Washington state has marketed itself as a no-income tax state, but those days have changed. I mean, first came the state's payroll tax and the capital gains tax, and just 4 months ago, Democratic Governor Bob Ferguson, he signed the so-called millionaire's tax into law. It would apply a nearly 10% rate on household income above $1 million starting in 2028. But on Wednesday, the Secretary of State announced opponents rounded up enough signatures to put a repeal measure on the ballot. Now, they say the tax was a tipping point for voters.
The legislature thought that they could ride a wave of sort of socialist populism, anti-rich, eat the rich. What we heard when I go out and talk to people and we were gathering signatures was people were pissed. They're not, the income tax is like the piece that made them go, that's it.
Now, on the other hand here, supporters say it could bring in $3 billion or more each year funding state services like education.
Washingtonians hear the benefits that flow to working families, to businesses, large and small, to kids in schools with those free meals, for child care services for thousands of Washington families. It's going to make a huge, huge difference.
Critics argue those changes are making some high-income earners and companies rethink where they do business, heading to places like Texas, Florida, Nevada. But not everyone here agrees. Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson, a Democratic socialist, pushed back on that, saying claims that millionaires will leave the state are, quote, overblown. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos was one of the first high-profile execs to leave the state back in 2023 after Washington's capital gains tax took effect. Now, this year, execs like Zillow co-founder Richard Barton and former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz also left the state citing personal reasons. And even this, Seattle-based Starbucks announced a major corporate expansion, but in Tennessee. Now, critics of the tax, they also are filing a lawsuit challenging it, saying it violates the state's constitution. But, John, for now, just all eyes are on what voters are going to end up deciding here in November.
All right, we'll see what they do. We should also point out that states like Florida, where a lot of these people are going, seem to have no budget problem.
The reason that Florida has no budget problem is because under Ron DeSantis, they and the Republican state legislature, they have actually been cutting costs, cutting budgets. Think about that. I mean, they have cut taxes and cut spending, and things are going well there. Go figure. It's crazy, right? So we knew I couldn't, if you're getting excited and thinking, oh my gosh, Rutgers is just going to do positive stories all day. No, I'm not. I'm also going to do some negative ones as warnings. Or in this case, and I'm going to this story because it's from Washington as well. My good friend Matt Shea went on some podcast. I actually don't know which podcast he went on. I'm going to have to track that down, give him a call and say, hey, which podcast did you go on? But the clip came out over the weekend, so I'm going to go ahead and play it. This is a warning. This is a full-blown, unambiguous warning about the risks of Sharia law. And if you don't think that there are real risks involved with Sharia, then you haven't been paying attention. Matt Shea is one who does pay attention. He's decorated war veteran. He's a pastor. He has his own show. He actually had a show for a while on Patriot TV. And so I've been listening to this guy for a long time. When I saw him pop up on my X feed, I thought, yep, that's got to go. That's got to go on the show. So check this out.
Definition, allowing an ideological system, a theopolitical construct, a complete way of life, and to replace our Constitution and our way of life, that is by definition sedition. And I want to be, again, very specific on this. For example, Article 1, Sections 8 and 10 of the United States Constitution require a free market. And yet Sharia, really, if I was going to sum it up in one sentence, talks about a one-world economy. Article 4, Section 4 of the United States Constitution requires a republican form of government. Yet Sharia says it is the only system and the only form of government that can be in existence in a nation. Article 6 of the United States Constitution says that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And as I mentioned, Sharia says it has to be the supreme law of the land. So anyone who is Sharia compliant cannot, as a matter of fact, then also take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, because one of those two things is a lie. The First Amendment specifically protects our God-given unalienable right to free speech, to religion, to peaceably assemble. And yet Sharia says that only Islam can be the religion, and any other religions must either convert or submit to Islam. And if they are Jews and Christians and Zoroastrians, they need to pay the jizya, or a tax, to be under that system. And they must feel the submission of Islam. The Second Amendment, we take for granted, I think, especially in places like Texas, the right to bear arms. And yet, under Sharia, there is no ability to bear arms for the kafir or for those who are infidels. The Fourth Amendment, no unreasonable searches and seizures. And yet under Sharia, property of kafirs or infidels can be seized as part of just warfare, or even if there is really little reason, it can be seized. The Eighth Amendment, no cruel and unusual punishments. And yet under Sharia, and specifically the Hudud, or the criminal code under Sharia, people can be crucified or beheaded for, quote, causing mischief in the land. That would be what we know as evangelism as Christians. The Ninth and 10th Amendments very clearly say that our rights come from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And yet under Sharia, and if you read it clearly, rights come from Sharia, and it only gives rights to those who have submitted to Sharia. You have the 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery and the incidences and badges of slavery, and yet under Sharia, slave trading is allowed and actually is still practiced to this day in places like Africa. The 14th Amendment, really clearly, and I'm not going to get into birthright citizenship, even though that's a hot issue right now, but the 14th Amendment clearly protects women, says there's equal protection under the law, and yet under Sharia, women are property.
He is correct. As I've said for years now, I am not politically against Islam or Muslims. I feel that they have the right here in the United States of America to practice their religion as long as it does not run contrary to the law, contrary to the Constitution. I am a big fan of, hey, it doesn't matter if they're Muslim or Jewish or Hindu or atheist or whatever. If they're here, then that's an opportunity for us to share the gospel, to try to help people to see the light, see the truth of the Bible, and understand their Creator, understand their Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So I don't want political solutions when it comes to Islam. I want personal solutions, cultural solutions, faithful solutions. But when it comes to Sharia law, yeah, absolutely. We need political protections because those who are pushing Sharia are they're pushing for the Islamification of the United States. Nope, that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. Lord willing, we will be able to do everything that we can to stop it. And it is, unfortunately, it is spreading like crazy. We don't want to be Iran. Iran is is an Islamic state, not ISIS, but they are a state. They have an Islamic government, and they are radical. And this is why I said this for a while as well, that I didn't want to go to war at all with Iran, because I didn't see it as a easy, quick, no boots on the ground ever kind of deal. I had I think perhaps even a clearer understanding than maybe some of President Trump's advisors when it comes to how embedded Sharia and the Shiite ideology, the Twelver ideology, is within the government. Is not just with the mullahs, not just with the Ayatollah or the new supreme leader, if he is even still there, but also with the IRGC. It's a hydra. You chop one head off, you get two more, and that's what we're seeing play out. With that said, I thought that we would be able to prevent, or at least slow the assistance that they would be getting from their allies, either Russia or China. And what we're seeing with the attacks over the weekend, attacks that resulted in American service members dying, that there's something happening here, something that I guess our military leaders didn't see, or perhaps they did see it and thought that it was worth the risk of not being able to necessarily defend. They're getting help, is the bottom line. They're getting help, and the only question we have now, is it Russia, is it China, or is it both?
Well, John, thanks so much for having me on. I think one of the interesting things, and I've just seen kind of breaking news on this, was the precision in which they were able to strike sensitive targets within Jordan. And the reporting is indicating that perhaps China or Russia was feeding them targeting information. Now, we need to get to the bottom of that, particularly if we're talking about China, on the back of the news that the president just broke and declassified about them stealing over 200 million voter files from the United States, and obviously interfering in our election, where they were trying to influence through media campaigns or social media people's perceptions and how they were ultimately going to vote. China is our adversary. We need to make this very, very clear. This is one of the reasons last year I introduced a bill to eliminate all student visas for China. Why are we training and educating our enemies to then work to destroy us? It doesn't make any sense at all. And this is why the president has implemented tariffs on them and tried to pull back our industry from China. So we need to get to the bottom of this. But where do we go from here, though, is also looking at how we're going to work with those GCC partners in the region, because this could tip over, hopefully not, could tip over into a regional destabilizing conflict, which nobody wants that. But some of these folks in the region there really need to step up and think about their own interest in this as well.
Yes, I know that President Trump has said many times that we don't need help. I would love to get some help. I really would. I think that we need to get our allies, if they are truly allies, in the Middle East, not just Israel, but others in the Middle East, to help bring this regime down. I always say, you know what, I'm not a fan of regime change. I don't like regime change 99 times out of 100. This is the one out of 100. And I don't even know if it's possible. I'm still not in favor of boots on the ground. A lot of people are talking about it. Not liking that one bit. But I will back the president regardless, because he is the president of the United States. And I can criticize him. I could criticize his decisions. It's rare. It's becoming more rare lately. Like I said, I didn't want to go into Iran, but if we're going in, then we finish the job. No half measures. We go all the way, and we get to an actual full-blown end game. Now, I had said weeks ago, and I'm not trying to brag here, but I said way back when everybody was complaining, oh, the memorandum of understanding, they're going to break it, they're going to back out, they're going to take advantage of it. Yes, we know. President Trump knew. He acknowledged last week that he knew that they were probably going to break it, but it was a test. He called it a test. I said that it was an opportunity to make them an offer they can't refuse, give them a memorandum of understanding that gives them everything that they could possibly truly want. No nukes, okay? No control over the Strait of Hormuz, but pretty much everything else. I mean, rebuilding and autonomy, we'll stay out of your business, yada, yada. And yet, we knew, they knew, we knew, everybody knew they were going to break it. And again, you had to give them an offer that was just too good so that when they break it, which they have, then we can call to the rest of the world and say, look, there's nothing, we're doing what we offered them everything. They decided not to take it. So now let's step up, everybody get together, and let's take out this insane regime that is working against its own people. Because the memorandum of understanding would have been a huge, if they had stuck to it, if they had negotiated in good faith and made it work, then this would have been good for them. Unfortunately, I didn't like that idea, but good for the regime, good for the people of Iran, good for the region. But now that they have declared that it's more important to them to engage in jihad than it is to do what's best for their people, okay, we gave them a chance. Now let's finish the job. And we do need help from others in the area. And like I said, it looks like they're getting help. Just like the guy before said, it's probably Iran. I'm sorry, it's obviously Iran. It's probably China. But China is not only focused on Iran. Obviously, they have their sights set on Taiwan, but they also apparently have their sights set on us. But before I get to that story, shout out to my wonderful, amazing friends over at Promise Grounds Coffee. It's got it in my little, today we're going with the purple Stanley Cup, the hot version of the coffee. You can check them out and order from them by going to jdrucker.com/coffee, jdrucker.com/coffee, and it is a Christian company, but even without that notion, which I do hold in high regard, but I'm not going to drink coffee that I don't like just because I agree with the company's politics or faith or ideology. Now, I won't go so far as to say I would drink this coffee if it was from a leftist or a globalist or anything like that. I probably still have my qualms, but it would be tough because it is the best coffee that I have ever had. More and more people have been ordering it. Ever since I started doing these promos, hardcore on my shows. I'm asking, again, if you haven't yet, join the crowd. Hop on the coffee train. Go to jdrucker.com/coffee. So back to China. China is our enemy, period. This isn't like, oh, they're a frenemy, we're sort of okay with them, we got to trade with them. No, they want to destroy us. They do. They really want to destroy us. They want to, at the very least, dominate us. I don't think they have the same evil ends as, say, the globalist elite cabal or the powers and principalities that view the United States and our faithfulness, which I know is dwindling, but it's still there, our Christ-centered nation, our Christian nation. They want to destroy us. The globalists do. The powers and principalities, the New World Order, whatever you want to call them. The Democrat Socialists of America, their domestic wings here. But China, I think they would be okay with just dominating us, as long as they're better than us, as long as they would want to beat us in any way possible, even in a war. And as crazy as it sounds to think that we could go to war with them, they really do have their sights set on Taiwan. All those signs are pointing to within a year, they're going to be attacking, and they know that we're going to have something. I'm actually surprised they haven't attacked already while we're in the middle of the Iran thing, but maybe they have their own internal reasons for doing so. I don't know why they want to attack, and I don't know if they're going to attack, and I don't know why they haven't attacked yet. I just know that that's what a lot of the analysts are saying, that they're poised to attack. But they're also looking at us. How can they defeat us? Militarily. Again, it sounds crazy, but if there is any one individual nation that could go head-to-head with the United States, it would be China, just based on pure bulk. They have more of pretty much everything. Okay, we might have better of everything. They have more of everything. And it looks like, based upon this report, they are taking the potential for a war with the United States very seriously.
Photos. showing China building replicas of U.S. ships in the desert, with some now warning Beijing is using them to conduct military tests. Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin is reporting live on this out of Washington for us. Hello, Jen.
Hi, Sandra. Well, this is a 510-foot 3D replica of an Arleigh Burke-class U.S. Navy destroyer built in the middle of the Taklamakan Desert in China's Xinjiang province. Vantor, an American satellite company, tracked the construction over the past 6 months. The model could be used for potential targeting. It has an exact replica of the helicopter launch system on board, mast, bridge, and deck guns used on this particular American warship.
It's very detailed. I mean, it's super duper detailed compared to earlier ones. Now, we've had targets before that clearly look like Arleigh Burke class destroyers, and we've had targets that clearly look like aircraft carriers, but this one is really just super detailed, which makes me wonder why.
Thomas Shugart, a former Navy submarine commander, said it's not the first time that China has made a replica of U.S. warships or fighter aircraft. In 2021, the People's Liberation Army built a mock U.S. aircraft carrier for what the U.S. military thought was for target practice. Now the Chinese may use the replica to train AI to recognize the shape of an American destroyer.
Maybe they have a weapon system, whether it's a drone or a missile or something, that if they send it into a group of ships, they want it to be able to home in on and hit the right ship, the one they really wanted to get.
Others think these replicas were designed to be seen by satellite, a strategic message to the leaders of the United States and Taiwan. The Chinese military also built this exact model of Taiwan's presidential palace.
It's communicating to the United States and Taiwan that we are planning to attack you, that you should look for other paths, look for concessions. This is about message.
All right, Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, I'm going to stop you right there. I'll wholeheartedly disagree. I know he's a Rear Admiral, and he knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. But the precision with which they are building these things, if this was just to be seen on satellite, they could have done that with basically cardboard and duct tape. No, this is a lot more than that. I like that first guy's analysis that this has something to do with recognition via AI, understanding that, look, hey, this is what it looks like. Analyze as much of it as you can, get to know, where to go, and testing things out. Not just learning, but also testing their own capabilities of AI-driven drones, for example. The idea that they would go through and build all these things just to send a message saying, hey, go to the negotiating table. Look, we're not the ones that need to be given the message to go to the negotiating table. Okay, Taiwan's they don't need to be told to go to the negotiating table. We're not the aggressors against China in this one. So, no, sorry. Again, I know he's a Rear Admiral, but even Rear Admirals can be mistaken, and I think that this particular one is. Speaking of mistaken, I think it was funny, and I've already covered this a bit, and I was actually very aggressive in my commentary, saying that organizations like CNN that decided not to air President Trump's speech, but to debunk it preemptively and after the fact, that demonstrates that they think that their audience is stupid, right? I mean, they have to be. They couldn't think that their audience is smart enough to be able to listen to President Trump and discern on their own, or even follow with commentary regarding it. So surely they think that their audience is just stupid. Well, okay, let's take that at face value, number one. Number two, let's look back. Let's see what CNN was saying when Joe Biden was president, or at least pretending to be president. When Otto Penn was president, CNN, ahead of the 2024 election, CNN seemed to have some grave concerns about the very things that they say President Trump is wrong about.
One major point of tension between the U.S. and China that will only grow in the coming months is concerns about China meddling in U.S. elections. Listen to our conversation on that topic.
I want to ask you about a commitment that CNN has reported President Xi made to President Biden when they met in November. We reported that he told President Biden that China would not interfere in the upcoming presidential elections in the United States. But since then, there have been reports of online Chinese accounts that have falsely mimicked Trump supporters. Do you believe that these accounts violate President Xi's commitment?
What I can tell you is this. President Biden was very clear about that with President Xi, and I repeated that today in my meetings.
You repeated what?
That any interference by China in our election is something that we're looking very carefully at and is totally unacceptable to us. Look, it's something we're tracking very carefully. I can't speak to these specific reports. I can say that as a general matter, we've been very clear with China, don't do it.
But they're not violating the commitment yet, as far as you can tell?
Well, again, I'd have to look at the specific reports that you're referring to, but we have seen, generally speaking, evidence of attempts to influence and arguably interfere, and we want to make sure that that's cut off as quickly as possible.
Now, it is noteworthy that he said that there is evidence of China attempting to influence and arguably interfere in U.S. elections just months after President Biden and President Xi had that conversation. It's clear that China is not heeding those warning calls from the United States. He also said that it's the concern that China is seeking to mirror what Russia is doing in terms of influence efforts in the United States, trying to sow division that are already apparent in the U.S.
Evidence that they tried to influence and maybe interfere in the elections. Terrific to have you here, Kylie. Thank you so much for sharing this breaking news.
Oh, how CNN likes to be stupid. I couldn't think of anything else to say. So I'm going to turn this over now briefly. Well, not briefly. This is actually a pretty long clip. It's a 14-minute clip, but it's an extremely, extremely important one. This is Susan Kokinda over at, I think that's how you pronounce her name, over at Promethean Action, great organization that I know of so far. Haven't done the deep dive. For all I know, they could just be awful. But listening to a couple of posts, reading and listening to a couple of posts by Susan, I would say that chances are good. Again, I'm not vouching for them fully yet because I haven't done my due diligence. I remember I was vouching for some organization and it turned out that they weren't quite as ideologically aligned with my perspectives as I thought. Based upon my first two videos that I watched and posts that I read from Promethean Action, I would say chances are they are, at least the Susan lady, is headed in the right direction. This one, actually, I have to play the entire thing because she nails it. I mean, she says things and highlights important aspects of President Trump's speech, but beyond just his speech, about other speeches and other actions that I think you all, well, you need to hear. This is, again, Susan Kokinda from Promethean Action, and I'll see you on the other side.
Weeks before President Trump gave his Thursday night address, a Democratic senator let slip what was really at stake.
The other thing that we blocked yesterday was the SAVE Act, right? Which was literally allow this administration to rig our democracy so that it would be hard for any Democrat in any state to win any election.
There you have Senator Alyssa Slotkin, nominally from Michigan, but really channeling her CIA training, admitting that her party can't win if the U.S. adopts the kind of voter identification laws that most of the other civilized nations in the world use. That's why President Trump addressed the nation on Thursday to motivate passage of the Save America Act. Of course, that speech has set the hair on fire of the entire anti-Trump universe. But what almost no one noticed is that on the same day, both the Secretary of State and the Secretary of the Treasury stood at a different podium and announced the other half of the story, the half that isn't about ballots at all. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've followed the imperial assault on our country from the strategic mountaintop to the election integrity trenches in Michigan, which is why I know what Donald Trump did on Thursday was masterful. If you want to follow how this unfolds, hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Here's what I'm covering today. First, the cover-up the president flushed into the open, and the two ways the enemies tried to bury it again on the same night. Second, how the Michigan case study makes the president's point. And third, the bombshells that Rubio and Bessent dropped and how that completes the picture. So let's start with President Trump.
No country can be great without fair and honest elections. You have to trust your country, because if there can be no trust, there can be no greatness. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard. Tonight, I'm announcing the immediate declassification and release of critical intelligence, revealing shocking vulnerabilities in our election infrastructure.
Now, the fire hose of details is going to dominate the news about China, 220 million voter files, hacked systems, non-citizens on the payroll, and other vulnerabilities. People with more time than I have are going to parse every page of the now declassified documents, and that's important. But don't get drowned in the details. That wasn't the president's main purpose anyway. The importance of what he did on Thursday was to drag the cover-up into the daylight. That's what he wants you to see, that officials inside our own intelligence agencies work to keep the China findings away from the president and away from you. One FBI official even boasted that she was running a, quote, shadow government, unquote, to keep the intelligence buried. Let that sink in. The shadow government hiding a threat to our electoral processes. And this isn't really Democrat or Republican. It's a permanent apparatus that serves the modern empire. Well, the next morning, Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullins put it bluntly.
There's no question the intelligence community from the FBI, CIA, and even other places within DHS, not underneath President Trump's leadership, but that was underneath the Biden administration, kept it from President Trump and the American people in Congress. Everybody that purposely misled the American people, abused their power and their authority, and decided not to continue doing their job will be held accountable.
Now, Mullins was talking about those past cover-ups, but you actually saw how this works in real time, because there's two ways to bury something. You can wave it off as nothing, or you can make sure nobody sees it. And on Thursday, they did both. Here's the first. Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said, "That was an embarrassing speech with no new info, just lies and rehashed conspiracies. It's incumbent on all of us not to treat that like real news. No new info." This is the same Mark Warner who spent years on the Russiagate case. When the accused foreign actor was Russia, Warner demanded investigations, hearings, intelligence briefings, years of media coverage, and capped it all off with a 5-volume report. When the alleged foreign actor is China, he says the president revealed essentially nothing. Nothing to see here, folks. But saying nothing to see here only works on the people who saw it. So here's the second way you bury a story. You decide they shouldn't see it. ABC, NBC, and CNN decided not to show the president's primetime address on foreign interference in American elections. Remember how that topic dominated the news cycle for the entirety of Trump's first term? Instead, ABC ran a game show, and NBC ran Tom Hanks narrating a nature documentary about alligators in a Gulf Coast swamp. Secretary Mullins again drilled down on the importance of this.
So ABC and NBC not carrying that, why? What are they trying to cover up? Why wouldn't they want to inform the American people? Why are they calling themselves a news outlet if they're not actually trying to put the news out there? The president wasn't trying to relitigate what happened in 2020, although he definitely could at this point. The president was giving facts. What we have exposed, what the Biden administration covered up, what the intelligence community held from the American people, Congress, and the executive branch, and we're putting it out there. And yet, 2 major networks didn't want to cover it. I think the question really should say why.
That's it right there. The president wasn't trying to relitigate what happened in 2020. He was exposing a cover-up of vulnerabilities to our electoral processes. and the self-appointed guardians of democracy decided a game show was more important. Well, you won't find game shows or nature documentaries on Promethean action. What you will find is a battle-tested analysis of the fight our nation is waging to reclaim its economic and strategic sovereignty. That's a good reason for you to sign up for our free newsletter. The link is in the description. So back in the TDS-dominated universe, the drumbeat never stops. Unfounded claims, no evidence, and on and on. Well, the president did drop a very specific tidbit that gives the whole picture away. He isn't relitigating the election, he's setting a trap. Many were expecting him to drop big bombshells about Fulton County, Georgia. He pointed somewhere else, and when he started talking about Muskegon, Michigan, I sat up and took notice. I was active with the Michigan Fair Elections Group when the Muskegon story broke, and I sat on many conference calls as it developed. Here's what happened. In the fall of 2020, the city clerk in Muskegon started receiving thousands of new voter registrations when the city usually receives around 250. Over 8,000 new registrations were delivered by an outfit called GBI Strategies, a company contracted by major Democratic groups to the tune of millions of dollars in the 2020 election cycle. The clerk noticed identical handwriting on the signatures on many of the registrations and called the authorities. Investigators raided GBI's offices in Michigan, seized prepaid gift cards, company records, and 5 semi-automatic rifles with suppressors and 5 customized pistols. No one ever explained the artillery. But what happened to the investigation? It got handed over to the Biden FBI and buried. That's what the president wants you to see. Not proof that changes the outcome of 2020, but the methods that were used and then covered up. Well, Donald Trump is now putting the biggest spotlight in the world on this entire apparatus, and Secretary Mullins made clear that the full enforcement and prosecution powers of the U.S. government will now be deployed against it. Now, remember what Alyssa Slotkin said at the outset? If you can't run elections the way the Democrats have been running them, we'll never win again? Well, that's the motive, stated out loud. Rigging the vote is the first lever. But when that won't do the job, the empire reaches for a second lever. And that is exactly why Rubio and Bessent were standing at that other podium on Thursday. So, a few hours before the president spoke on Thursday, the State Department convened what they called a ministerial on the resurgence of political terrorism. 60 nations were focused on the danger of left-wing terrorism. I'll get to Secretary Rubio's main speech in a moment, but to see where it all fits in, you need to hear what Scott Bessent said first.
And before I proceed, I'm going to go off script for a minute, which is always dangerous, but I'm going to remind everyone in this room and all the media that I was the subject of an assassination attempt February 2024 by an adult left-wing activist 2 hours after being sworn into my job. So any of you who want to report that this is a fiction and does not exist, be there for the sentencing this August.
This is the other half of the story. How does an imperial elite take over nations? Well, they can rig elections, but they can also do it by removing the people who will challenge their policies. People like Scott Bessent, people like Donald Trump. Keep that in mind as you listen to Secretary Rubio, who catalogs some of the previous victims of political left-wing terror.
You remember the machine gun massacres of Italy's Red Brigades, which held the 5-time prime minister captive for 55 days before subjecting him to a revolutionary so-called people's trial and executing him in 1978. You remember the Red Army faction's nearly 3-decade campaign of bombings, kidnappings, and assassinations in Germany, murdering dozens and injuring hundreds more.
Rubio didn't name the names, but I will. That Italian prime minister was Aldo Moro, the most powerful politician in Italy at the time, killed at the exact moment he was building a stable, self-governing Italy, when the whole imperial game depended on keeping Italy weak and divided. But it's the German assassinations that Rubio mentioned where you see the real pattern. In November of 1989, shortly after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a close ally of the German chancellor was assassinated. Alfred Herrhausen, the chairman of Deutsche Bank, was killed by a roadside bomb so sophisticated that the case has never been solved to this day. Why him? He was building a plan to rebuild Poland's industry using a national reconstruction bank with directed long-term credit for factories and infrastructure. He was also calling for third world debt relief. None of that was in the globalist plan. And Herrhausen's policies were similar to the American system policies now being revived by this administration. 2 years later, in April of 1991, Detlev Rohrabacher was assassinated by the same left-wing terrorist group. He was a steel man trying to restructure East German factories and save them. After he was killed, the factories were asset stripped by financial parasites, and about 4 million jobs in East Germany disappeared. In both cases, the builder is removed, and the policy that follows comes right out of the imperial business model. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern. Moro, Herrhausen, Rohrabacher, all committed to political and economic sovereignty for their nations. Rubio also mentions other left-wing terrorist formations, like Peru's Sendero Luminoso, which killed tens of thousands and explicitly targeted engineers and agronomists and Peru's infrastructure. Secretary Rubio drew the right conclusion.
It has always been driven by a hatred. Above all else, a hatred for civilization itself. It is a revolt of the worst against the best, a revolt of the weak and the cowardly against the strong and the good. It is perpetrated by those who cannot build, who cannot create, who cannot achieve great things.
He just didn't name the names of the greater men. I did. So step back and look at the two podiums together, the way your social media feeds never will. The empire has only ever had two levers to overturn the verdict of a free people: corrupt elections or kill the leaders who threaten their system, rig the ballot or remove the builder. And in a single day, this administration moved against both. At the first podium, the president dragged the election cover-up into the daylight and made the people who buried it show themselves. Mark Warner in words, the networks in darkness. At the second podium, the Secretary of State put the history of political assassinations on the world stage, and the Treasury Secretary dared the press to look at it. For centuries, the empire has used irregular warfare to maintain its power. The United States is now led by people who are finally fighting back on that battlefield. If you want to stay in that fight, join us at Promethean Action and support us in every way that you can. This has been your Saturday Wrap. Thanks for watching.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at PrometheanAction.com.
Brilliant stuff there. Again, not going to vouch for them fully yet. So far, 2 pieces in, I like what I'm seeing. The next one might be something crazy. So, not vouching for them yet, but I will continue to watch them and see if they are as ideologically sound and analytically appropriate as I would like for them to be. And if they are, then I'll follow them more and I'll probably post more of their videos. Good stuff. So let's go to a palate cleanser of sort. This is a story. It's a feel-good story. It highlights the dangers that we should all know. We should all be aware of the dangers of living here in the United States of America, even though it's safer than pretty much everywhere else. There are still dangers. There's still creepers and weirdos and demonically influenced and or possessed people out there who are doing horrible, horrible things. We know this. More of them are coming in every day. More of them are revealing themselves every day. But so too, as evil appears to rise, so too does good appear to be rising. Incidents are highlighting what I believe to be very clear and undeniable instances of divine intervention. People are being put in the right places at the right times, or removed from the wrong places at the right times, if that's what is called for. I've long said that if we were just left to our own devices, we would have been destroyed as a race long, long ago. That the only reason that we're still here is because of somebody up there looking out for us. And I think that this story is another example of that.
I saw a man beating on a woman, and I don't like that.
Cody Ratto was driving home on his break when he says he saw something that didn't seem right.
I stopped, I picked her up off the ground, I asked her if she was okay. She said, no, I'm not okay. He tried to kidnap me.
His instincts were right because the suspect jumped back in his car, attempting to drive away.
I jumped right back in my work truck and tried to take off after him.
This Ring camera video from a nearby home shows who police say is the suspect, 28-year-old Carlos Alonso Cuevas Ruiz. Police believe he's driving away in this black truck. Right behind him is Cody, trying to get his license plate.
This was quite shocking. My own 15-year-old daughter walks up and down the street all the time.
It's home video like this and the courage from witnesses like Cody in this tight-knit community that helped police track down the suspect quickly. Now this community is sleeping better at night.
Everybody did pitch in, everybody jumped in, everybody's sharing things. I mean, I feel better knowing that he is no longer on the street.
I'm glad they were able to catch him quickly, and that does speak well of the people of this town and of law enforcement.
As for Cody, would you do it again?
Every day. This was a blessing from God to be in the right place.
It truly was a blessing from God that he was in the right place to help this woman, to help to catch this predator or whatever he was, to get him behind bars. Praise God for that. All right, stay tuned. We are going to be doing a raid of the Wendy Bell radio show, which is coming right up. I do before, I guess, as our outro, I have this video by Man-Made Cinema that talks about the wildfire industrial complex. And it opened my eyes. I'll admit, I had never thought of wildfire prevention, wildfire fighting in this light, but now after watching this, it's like, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to leave you with that, and I hope to see you again after the Wendy Bell radio program, the JD Rucker Show. Not on this channel, it's on JD Rucker, JD Rucker Show channel. I think you can find it just by going to, I think it's jdrucker.com/show, and that'll take you directly to the channel. That'll be coming up at noon, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, where I do much more deep dives and discussions. Not so many clips, more me talking about crazy things in this world. So I do hope to see you there. Otherwise, Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.
So if fire suppression makes fires worse, then why do we do it? Well, wildfires are big business. And cousin, business is a boomin'. When you hear that the California wildfires cost billions of dollars, it's not like they just burned a stack of money. That money went somewhere. Every helicopter in the sky costs a lot of money. In fact, it's around 10 grand an hour. And the air tankers are even more. Every retardant drop from a VLAT costs north of $65,000 per bust. And they drop that shit like the expiration date is tomorrow. The Forest Service spends nearly $100 million a year on retardant. And it all goes to one private company. Fire aviation costs millions of dollars every day in peak fire season. And many of the ships are contracted out by private companies. They even have a 747. Thousands of miles of hose get used up every year. In 2020, they had a nationwide fire hose shortage. Every lunch, every Gatorade, marked up to government cost. The California Department of Corrections has a great racket. They use cheap prison labor to manufacture their equipment, but they bill at government cost. Why? Well, why not? It's not their money. It's yours. And it's not just the suppression costs. Destruction means transactions. How much money does a hardware store make off your house if it's just sitting there year after year? Well, how much money do you think they make when it burns to the ground? You think the car salesmen are distraught that they have to sell thousands of brand new cars every year because the ones they just sold you all burned up in a wildfire? Every burned out car means a new one is sold. Every leveled house means a new one is built. Contractors, labor, permits, building supplies, furniture, wiring, utilities. Every power pole has to be replaced by men working overtime with hazard pay. The wildfire industrial complex is a $12 billion a year industry in California alone. That's bigger than porn. And in a way, it is porn. Media clowns flock to wildfires like moths to a flame. They plant themselves in front of a raging headfire for the cool shot, and then have to run for their lives when it outflanks them. They overhype the intensity of the incidents for their fire porn, staging shots to heighten the drama for their unsuspecting viewers, doing multiple takes to get the ominous tone just right. Oftentimes, you'll find more fire pornographers than firefighters. And they cheer when homes burn up, and are visibly disappointed when a neighborhood is saved. They really only profit when their life has been destroyed on camera. Sometimes the firefighters like to tease the pornographers by pretending to do some hotlining, to trick them into racing over and raising their cameras. Talking heads with all the gravitas of an underwear model will cry out loud that everything you are seeing is unprecedented. It's not. There is no new kind of magical fire behavior that didn't exist before.